Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a lot cheaper now. Right, I think we're on 7 o'clock, so we may as well start and then everybody can get home.
Yeah.
Apologies about the time, but we do start at 7. And just to confuse you, some meetings start at 6, some start at 7, but
Try and encourage you to read the agenda thoroughly. That's what it is. It's all it is.
so have we got any apologies?
We have apologies from councillors Clark and Messent.
And have we any declarations of interest to items on the agenda?
I have one item 7, I think it is. A volunteer at the Heritage Centre.
No, don't think that's pecuniary.
That's a non-pecuniary interest. That's okay. Yeah.
Right, so we move on to the minutes of the Finance and Governance meeting on the 28th of February. And I don't know how many people would have been here.
Let's check. There was Councillor Strain Francis, myself, Councillor Maureen, Councillor John Rhodes.
So Dennis will move them. Anybody second them? Mr. Rhodes seconds. All those in favour?
That's it. Yeah.
Any against? Any abstentions?
Good. There, thank you.
Yeah, you weren't there. Just put your hand up for abstention.
Excuse me.
Right. So public participation period of 15 minutes for members of the public to ask questions or submit comments. I cannot see any members of the public here.
Non-submitted chair.
And no questions being submitted, so we can move on to item 5, which is the year finance position.
There's not a lot to review yet, Chair, to be fair.
So we are quite early in the year.
Yeah, there is nothing concerning in that because there's not an awful lot in it. But obviously, if anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer those that I can. We're at the early point of the year. We received the first half of the pre-sets, which is always nice, and had our back reclaims returned as well, which is nice. So we're in a nice, healthy position, and I expect it to be a bit more interesting. The next meeting there'll be some spend against it.
So what you're telling us really is this isn't much changed from the budget that we set.
Yeah, there's effectively 1 month's spending there. It wasn't a desperate busy one because it was just prior to the election. We haven't done month end for May yet because we have to wait for the statements to arrive sometime this week.
Has anybody got any questions on the finance? No? I'm happy to accept that proposal, Councillor Hopper, to note them.
Just have to move on when you're ready.
So we are now on to the standing orders, 6.1, which are the things that govern the committee.
Yep, we have, as a council, a number of governance documents, and there are a few core ones. Standing orders, constitution, financial regulations are the key ones in that. There's a few other important ones of those ones. And the standing orders provide the structure to how the council and committee operates. And one such aspect of that, and why they're specifically brought today so early in the governance year, the civic year, is it's been quite rightly been informally discussed whether the schedule of meetings needs a review. It is the practice of this council to hold meetings in the evening, as that's traditionally the most accessible time. 1 or 2 councillors have asked for some thought about that, and that's perfectly reasonable. And this committee might be the first point that some thought would go towards that.
Basically, there's something we have. That's a hot band.
It's not about the times of meetings, but kind of another question or issue to raise. The public speaking time is normal at most meetings, committee meetings and normal council meetings. I have to say, as a new member, I was surprised that there were public question times actually at the annual council meeting in Mayor that was referred to the other place. You all know yourself that Cheshire East councils anyway, and probably others, the civic part at any rate of the meeting is purely that. It might be a business meeting later. And no public questions on such an occasion. There could be other occasions, which one can only dream about or imagine, but there could be additional meetings for some specific purpose, which might be a civic matter, whatever. So I'd ask if consideration could be given to some suitable adjustment to that item in particular.
So, Clark, do you want to answer that one as you know more about these things than I do?
Public questions, public statements in council meetings are a protocol or a consideration. They're not a right, but it is a positive thing to have them. That said, it's not being considered by the council, as far as I'm aware, whether it's appropriate for all meetings, and an additional phrasing can be put into the standing orders drafted for consideration along the lines of public questions will be, it currently says somewhere, and I don't know them off by heart yet, I hope never to. The somewhere in there it says public questions will be, time will be allotted for public questions and comments at the start of all meetings. It could be added with the subtext, with the exception of civic occasions. That's perfectly reasonable to make the civic occasion rather than a business meeting of council. That's totally achievable.
So are you putting that forward as a proposal, Councillor Hogben?
I am.
So Councillor Hogben has proposed that we have that change to the standing orders, that we take out public participation from civic functions, i.e. the mayor making.
I'll second.
So Dennis will second.
Before we do that, could you point it out to me? Well, I think we need to.
I will try, yeah.
What it says, and whether we should amend it accordingly.
That'll take me a minute to locate it, but I'll dig it out. It's at 3F, 3G, 3H, 3I has been deleted at some point in the past, but the I hasn't been deleted. And so at 3I we could add, for example, with the exception, the correct phraseology, with the exception of civic occasions.
Yes. I was, I suppose I'm mainly asking, is this as a result of the mayor making and my colleague Brian Sylvester standing and saying what he's saying? Is that why you think that we should do that? As a matter of interest.
I would ask Councillor Hogben to comment as I have.
Councillor Hogben.
He suggested it.
Directly.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
it's as simple as that, because I mean, I've been to many mayor meetings and meetings over the years, since 1988.
Yes.
And the civic, especially the civic mayor meeting, has always been that kind of occasion.
Yeah.
It's an unusual occasion. And in particular, it's very often the case that the person who's been made the mayor or the retiring mayor, we invite lots of family, friends, sometimes people travel fair distances.
Right.
Whether that was the case this time, I have no idea.
Okay.
And to be quite honest with you, get robust questions and the like, it's a normal business meeting, it's normal, it's part of the course. But quite frankly, I was astonished. Quite happy to say that publicly.
Yeah, I think honesty is the most refreshing thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
So I mean that certainly made, and also the facts from a
past experience as the Cheshire East Council, I think at one time they had been into questions on all that at the annual council, and it was decided, you know, to change that. Just for that one occasion, or you can split the annual meeting into two parts if you want, you know, you can consider it sort of.
Can I just,
Yes,
I mean,
yeah, come back.
that would come back.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, I take what you're saying on board, I fully take that on board, and I think honesty and transparency is the only way forward in something as democratic as it has to be, otherwise there's no point. And I'm not defending Brian because I'm on the same page, kind of thing, but at the end of the day, I suppose when you've got a piece of paper and, as I now understand it, they're called standing orders, and the standing orders clearly say the public is able to have their say. So basically, he followed the protocol of the standing order. So therefore, actually, he didn't do anything, let me finish, that was out of bounds. That's one. Secondly, Jewel Rhodes in response equally was able to have her say. That wasn't protocol, because actually, you know, with respect, Jill, and I'm being honest as we spoke, could have just said, let's leave it at that and let it all go and let it all flow. He's had his say. I think the public wouldn't have noticed that it wasn't the flow, but I think it was highlighted further because probably, Jill, you said what you said, so then people are thinking, oh, really? So what I'm saying is, that's my opinion. I mean, you know, I don't really understand the protocols yet. I've been to a lot of board meetings, so I am just giving you my view from a respect from one colleague to another, because that's important. So I'm just saying, I don't think Brian did anything wrong because he followed what it said. I'm not speaking too far. Okay, but that's my thoughts.
Councillor Stone Francis.
Thank you, Chair. It says at the very first part of it is period not exceeding 15 minutes for members of the public to ask questions or submit comments in relation to the published agenda items. What Mr. Sylvester did
Right,
was nothing to do with the agenda.
right.
That's the only reason, as far as I'm concerned, he was totally out of order.
I'm
But that's
glad
my opinion.
Well, thank you for clearing that up, because obviously, again, I'm new.
Yeah.
So honestly, I promise you, if I'd seen that,
We're all new at some
yeah, I
stage.
know, well, I'm brand new. But what I'm saying is, had I have seen that and had I have coordinated that, my response tonight even would have been slightly different. I probably would have said, Brian had his say, but maybe I should have read. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I, like all of you, are here for one reason only. And that's what I stand for, and that's what I'll always stand for, is the people. You know, so that's it really. And like I say, Jill and I, you know, we took courage and,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I see, if you can't do that, what's the point?
Yeah.
Quite agree.
What's the
Yeah.
point?
Councillor Rhodes.
What I would contribute is that as the standing orders are, then anybody could have asked the question within those 15 minutes at the mayor meeting. No problem with that. I have no problem with that, because that's what we're looking at now and asking the question, should we at ceremonial events, which I see now to be memorable, should we take that part out and just have a ceremonial, and then it's, if you like, it's apolitical. It is celebrating the end of the current year, and I'm looking at how, in this case, how she did and how well she did, and handing it over to the next person. And I think it should be in that context, so I think we should change it. But there's equally opportunities throughout our year for anybody to come and ask questions as well as to the agenda. And I wouldn't want that to change, because I think that is
More than I do.
so I do think nobody took whatever we said and whatever was behind it, any of it. I think we should we looked at it and I think, okay, let's have a ceremonial, let's change it to something along the lines of what Pete said, and then That's my question.
Councillor Hopper?
I mean, we all agree, quite sure, the value of questions and public speaking. In fact, I mean, if you went back a few years, it was very uncommon in many cases. I mean, it certainly wasn't the norm, the common thing, as it is. Things like planning meetings, for example, you went back a few years, 10, 15 years, probably less than that. But depending on the council, some councils didn't even have proper public speaking time. Now there's very detailed protocols as to who can speak and how long, that kind of thing. And it works very well because it involves people in that particular planning process or in that particular process. And it's very valuable. And the same applies in broader sense to any meeting, council meeting. But I would say there's options, there's so many options, it's quite makes sense to bring something forward or put something on the table. That's the annual meeting in particular, that's the one that has a ceremonial bit at the beginning, which is a celebration. I think Council Rhodes put it really well. You know, that's like part one, you know, but do that, but the nice part of it out of the way, and then you have a short break or whatever, and then return to the business meeting. And that could quite easily be accommodated because you do the ceremonial bit first, you tie for your tea and buns or just a short interview, and then come back to business.
Yeah,
And then you can do a normal business meeting if you want to.
Yeah, I'm sure we can sort that out.
Yeah.
So the position has been put that for civic ceremonies, we do not have public participation. And presumably this is why Fisheries took the decision they did. I mean, what happened at the mayor making has happened. We can't change that. And we're looking at how we do things going forward. So is anybody willing to second Councillor Hopper's proposal? Right, so Councillor Francis seconded. All those in favour of that amendment to the standing orders?
Can I just say one more
Yeah.
thing? I'm sorry about that.
No,
You
you're
know,
all right.
like what the mayor's just said, that really had my colleague read the protocol of what you're allowed to actually comment on, then this would not have come into it. So really, so I'm saying, does it need changing? Because actually it is pretty clear.
I think
I don't know, do you see what I'm trying to say?
I think what is pointed out to us
Yeah,
is that if we need to make a difference between a civic ceremony
yeah, make it clearer.
and make it clearer, and by doing that we will make it clearer.
Clearer,
And then,
yeah,
you know,
okay, fair enough.
but I mean, at the end of the day, no one can change what's happening.
No, fair enough.
And we're not about putting blame on
No,
anybody.
absolutely not, no. Fair
So
enough.
I think this is making it clearer. So
Fair enough.
all those in favour of the change,
Yeah.
we need to,
It's unanimous, Chair.
thank you. And thank you for the debate and the sentiments expressed. So we're moving on, Councillor Rhodes.
Before we vote on adopting the standing orders, is there anything within those standing orders that have changed since we adopted them?
No, there isn't. It's just,
They're as is.
it's brought, the actual initial reason to bring it to the meeting, as is on the agenda, was to consider if you want to review the timings of meetings or provide any new definition to that. Now, before you ask me, Councillor John Rhodes, where it is in these standing orders, I found it once and now I can't find it again.
Terrible.
It's somewhere in this thick document is a reference to meetings in the evening. Now, if you are comfortable with meetings in the evening, remain as the principle of operation, that's absolutely fine, we make no amendments. If you wish to review that and start that conversation, that's entirely up to you. But at this immediate time, I've just had a real search and I can't find the reference point exactly where it is.
I mean, I'll let other people.
If I might.
Councillor Francis.
I vaguely remember a conversation saying that the reason we held it in the evening is because the majority of councillors who get paid to do things find it easier to get here in the evening as against in the afternoon, because majority of councillors nowadays have a job. So from what I can remember, I might be wrong, but I don't think so. having them in the evening was better for the majority. Thank you.
I mean, to me, the other question was, do we standardise the time, and then we don't get people turning up early or late?
Yeah.
So you're gonna go at me.
No, I turned up late.
It's entirely up to yourselves.
Haven't we always left it to the individual group to decide what time they wanted to start?
Yes, but I think, bearing in mind the number of people who turn up at different times for meeting, standardisation might be a way forward.
It might help some of us.
I think where standardisation is that the meetings, if for example, planning starts at 6 o'clock, so everybody knows your planning starts at 6. And that was decided to you know, equally if the committee feels it's 7, then it's 7. I think what we're asking here is should we leave them in the evening or review it for afternoons and so on. And I personally we should leave it for the evening.
I'm doing that.
I think that's easy for people who are working and you get up at school and particularly people involved in other things in the day because you might be tired but you're not really tired because you're somewhere else. It's not paid. As Dennis will know and Steve will all know. So I think I personally like 6 o'clock meetings. Well, the chair of the committee doesn't like 6 o'clock meetings, but I would only want to look at meetings I can if the committee decided that 7 is the time, then I'll go on with that, because at the end of the day, it's fine, you know. I don't want to change, you know.
Councillor Hoffman, I can see you grinning.
Well, it's such an old favourite. The debate about when you have committee meetings, you go for a long, long time. You know, in the days when sometimes it's still the case in some places, meetings are all in the day. You know, which might suit some people and not others. I just wonder, well, the question that comes into my mind is what's the public opinion? Is it something that is it something the public might be interested in? Which is helpful. We've just been discussing, public engagements and so forth in the previous.
Well, I don't know, and I've no idea what the public think.
No, but that's the point, isn't it? I mean, I don't like personal preferences. I mean, I go with flow.
Okay.
Me personally,
Murray?
I prefer in the evening. I mean, I've been to an afternoon meeting reception, but to be perfectly honest, I find it very inconvenient. Whereas having them in the evening, it's not as inconvenient. So, I mean, but that's my personal opinion. I mean, I don't know about the rest of the council, but I would prefer it to be in the evening.
Right, so I'm going to make a proposal then that we keep the meetings in the evening, but we standardise them at 6 o'clock.
Need a second, Chair.
You don't have to do that just because I've heard.
No, it'd be better if you just know what time we start.
I will second that. It
That
will
is
certainly
just-
help me.
Councillor Strange Francis will second that. And that we do a review in 12 months' time. So all those in favour of keeping meetings in the evening, standardised at 6 o'clock with a review in 12 months' time.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. We move on to this exciting policy, the banners policy.
Yes. No one said parish councils can't be exciting. No one said they were going to be either. Yeah, the banners policy just gives, we don't have one, and it's one that gives a clear idea of what we want and will accept in the town. The proliferation of vinyl banners, advertising all sorts of things is an ongoing issue in any town, fly posting, that sort of thing. Cheshire East has a clear way forward policy, which is about A-boards on the highway, so we don't put an obstruction to those with visual impairments or obstruction to those requiring wider paths, such as prams or wheelchairs. But additionally, there can be a lot of things going on. Now, it is my personal practice to ask the rangers to remove every single commercial banner that is put up in the town without consent, that they will be taken down and disposed of on site. The reason being, the proliferation happens very quickly, and it's unlicensed fly posting by any description. This is a banner policy to regulate my wanton regard for that.
Are you saying that if you wanted to put an A-board outside a building, you need permission?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
No, this is purely about, if you drive down Macon Way between the station roundabout and the Earl Street roundabout, or Hungerford Road roundabout, there can be a dozen things tied to trees, whatever it is. And they eventually wear out, they flap along the road, and if you don't keep an eye on it and regulate it tightly, it's very easy to make a mess of town. So I personally would advise you to be very clear on the approach.
Am I right in saying is the banner gone up there at the roundabout?
Which roundabout?
When you go back into town? Crossing there, then you've got the roundabout, which is just before the town. There's railings there outside the bank.
Oh, outside NatWest?
Yes.
I haven't been out of the building today,
I
so
think there was one stuck on there yesterday when I walked past yesterday.
well, under
Some printing company.
my usual practice, I would ask the rangers to remove it post haste, and this just explains that in more professional language.
I won't know whether it's there now or not until I walk back.
Councillor Hogben?
So, I mean, effectively, it's basic fly post.
It definitely is flag posting.
Yeah, it is.
That said, I would say in this policy, it does say for community activities and charity activities, they're allowed for a sensible period of time in advance and given a bit of time for volunteers to get down after the event. So it's not an absolute moratorium on those. So those with community benefit can be advertised. If it's commercial activity, purely commercial gain, it's fly posting.
It doesn't cross over anything that any other authority might have. We are empowered to do.
We're entirely empowered to do it. We're already doing it. This is just regular.
Right, so has anybody else got any other questions? Right, so has anybody willing to propose the banner policy? Councillor Hogben, seconder. Councillor Murray. All those in favour of the banner policy? Thank you. 6.3, the environment policy.
This is a pre-existing policy, Chair, that is part of the rolling review. I haven't amended it in any way, but it's just to show due diligence has been acted, that it's been shared with members and checked upon.
Right, anybody any questions? Give it time to have a quick flick through. About its music, it's quite short, it's up to the point.
I'll move accept.
Right, so Councillor Stone-Francis is moving it. Anybody willing to second? Councillor Murray. People still reading. All those in favour of the environment policy? Right, we're now on to item 7, which is engagement with the Heritage Centre. I'm going to pass over to Clark, who will explain the paper we've had.
Okay, Crewe Heritage Centre is obviously a key feature of representing the heritage of Crewe. That's its rail as well as its industrial and engineering heritage and social history. It is run by volunteers. It has one part-time employee to help run that whole site. And over the past 2 years, the heritage officer, heritage manager, same person, has been working very closely with them to try and help them with their governance operations and help them have some greater order to their actions and improve their delivery in the aim of making it a registered museum. The benefit of being a registered museum is access to additional funding and sustainability of the organisation. The relationship has been extremely positive to the extent that the Heritage Centre has asked that Crewe Town Council might consider stepping in and having executive responsibilities in the Heritage Centre. I have refined that request down a bit more to make it clearer and also minimise risks and liabilities for all. The principle being that the Heritage Centre now must think about its future succession and future sustainable delivery, and also its potential for the town. It delivers what it delivers very well. Could it be a greater and more up-to-date attraction? I think that's right, but it would take significant grant funding investment to achieve that significant grant funding investment, of which we're talking about millions. You would need to do some work in preparation to ensure it's compliant with all regulation, health and safety regulation, personal data regulation, all that sort of thing. I'm not saying it isn't, but that has to be evidenced as well as delivered. Equally, operations could be improved and the sustainability of the volunteer force could be helped through that. And there are opportunities for savings. The site is challenging in that it has two owners, Cheshire East and Railtrack. The lease agreements are based on legacy understandings rather than detailed modern leases. And there is lack of clarity on responsibilities of maintenance. That's why I'm suggesting executive authority site isn't quite the right time right now, because those would require some significant clarity and completion. What this is proposing with the request of the Heritage Centre is that we support them by 2 years of a person to develop their case for a large scale application for funding using Heritage Centre funds, some Crewe Town Council funds and some other external funds to generate this post, and that they would become effectively the on-site operational manager, but not the executive. The executive would still be the trust and the trustees of the Heritage Centre. The breakdown of funding is in there, but it's looking in the region of £18,000 from the Heritage Centre, £10,000 from Crewe Town Council, and £10,000 from an external funder as yet to be applied for. So that's the proposal. It's done with all positivity and in partnership with the Heritage Centre, and it's to see with the very clear intent of a sustainable and much more prosperous future for the Heritage Centre and the town's heritage. That's the intent of that.
Thanks, Pete. Has anybody got any questions?
Yes, one, can we afford it?
Then I have one answer, and that is yes, very easy.
Councillor Rose.
So the objective for them was, if we take it on, is to get museum status in 2025, which will go in line with the archive centre.
Yeah.
In 2025.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm reading what was in the intentions. So, and yes, by having it as a museum, then it would enable us to tap in to what I would want, which would be all the resources at your railway museum.
Is that added value as well? Yes.
Which to me, as a lot of those trains there were built in Crewe, many thousands of them, we haven't got thousands there now, but we've never really, let's be honest about it, ever since 1987, we've never really had it as what you would want, what you're really thinking of. Yeah, you have the history of Crewe, but you've never had, we've had Columbine there, we've had various there, but nothing that's what I call sexy. Oh, you might not think same-sex was sexy. Like I know it's going right to the world, I don't mind.
If I may, I wasn't expecting at a finance and governance meeting to hear the word sexy.
Sexy, not sexist, sexy.
Yeah.
And if you go, when I took my young children at the time to the railway museum and you look at my lad I mean, I'm not, but you're looking at those things and the size of them and the paint and you look at the people looking at that and they're thinking, now I look at that in a different way than somebody else. I look at it from an engineering perspective and people who work really hard and toil within true work. So I have this imagination for Pottery clocks that we can have a proper museum. How's that sexy Pottery clocks? We can have a proper museum because we have to take a lot of flack for what's happened to Crewe. It's not us directly, but we take a lot of flack. And if we can protect anything and we can make something where people say it's worth going to the Heritage Centre. So I all I would say was it's £10,000 per year, £20,000. If it doesn't work out, we haven't, in the great scheme of things, that is not, you know, we're paying less than a third towards it in the book, which is unusual, you can put a lot more. So I'm all for it. I just hope it comes off because we really do need to up the ante of our history. And as I say, I won't use the word again. I've shared a bit of all my soul in this good news. But after this, it's all off the cuff. So I'm all for it, and I hope it. I really hope it will.
Councillor Murray.
I think if the council does get involved, I think it'll be a good thing for the Heritage Centre, and I think also that the Heritage Centre is lacking a steam locomotive. One that was built in Crewe, and people can go up there and say, that's our steam locomotive, and it was built here in Crewe. When you go up there now, there's what, three diesels, two electric locomotives. One was built in Derby, the 87 was built in Crewe, and the HSTs built in Crewe. Carriages and the locomotives. So, I mean, the place is lacking a steam locomotive. And if it has one, it needs to be a running steam locomotive that the Heritage Centre can hire out and make money from.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Strain Francis.
Thank you, Chair. On this, it says there, item 2, whatever it is, the heritage manager is to attend all council management meetings in a non-voting capacity. If we're taking over.
No, we're not taking over. We're supporting them with operational expertise. They're having, they're still a trust with trustees with executive responsibility, as in very similar to the councillors. They have the executive responsibility for the council. So you directors, and that will still be there. There'll be, it says there, heritage manager give professional expertise and advice in that approach.
Okay, I misread it.
Councillor Hogman.
I think that distinction is important, because I think if we took over some sort of executive responsibility, that could be a bottomless pit, I suspect. And it has been said, and there's been a lot of talk about, oh, what a shame that the National Railway Museum went to York. That may well have been a mixed blessing for York, in fact. I'm not doing that one. I remember going to the Clapham. That's a long time ago. I'm pretty sure I saw the Mallard there. But when to the Mallard with the doctors.
I know it was. I didn't refer to that. It wasn't built.
Sorry. Yeah. Although that is the engine. That is the best thing.
The Mallard is an LNG.
I know. I know.
It's not now the national.
I know it's nowhere near. That's what I said. Doctors. I know that, but. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with the idea of having a steam locomotive there, but I think it is important to recognise that heritage of Crewe exists because of the railways, but it isn't just about steam engines or electric locomotives. It's about much more than that, and that's great to have a steam locomotive, which is the oldest one. Did you mention Column? That was built about 18. Like that. That's, you know, That would be a neat one.
I can't promise that at this stage. What I can say is this, I think, reflects the town's ambition for that site and the aims of reflecting what people really want to see. And that's not to be derogatory to the hard-working, very committed volunteers who toiled there for many years. I think they also want to, that's why they've opened the door to us and asked for help.
Can I propose a move to vote?
Right, so councillor Dreyfus is proposing that we accept the suggestion from the clerk that we engage with the Heritage Centre.
Would you like me to read out what that might
Yes.
sound like?
Please, yes.
Something
You've got
like,
the piece of
I'm making a guess now, something like. The officers under the direction of the town clerk are authorised to act at the Heritage Centre for the purpose of delivery of operational compliance, development and project delivery in support of the shared ambition for future external funding projects of scale. The £10,000 is committed from the coming 2 years' budgets to support the funding of a dedicated officer at the site, match funded by the Heritage Centre and grant funding. The external funding to support the coming 2 years' budgets is sought. The staffing structure is amended accordingly through the personnel subcommittee and recommended to council.
I'd like to know how he reads my mind.
I can't imagine how I read your mind, Dennis.
It's a learned gift, sometimes.
What he just said.
Right, so Dennis is proposing that we accept this. Is anybody willing to second? Councillor Hogben, all those in favour? I think Councillor Morse forgot to hand a bit later. So yeah, it would be really good if we could make through a destination for tourists. If we could do, and we could, you know, speaking hypothetically, if the Heritage Centre became a museum, and if we had the Archive Centre, plus the remaining railway buildings that we've got, we are beginning to have something that could become a tourist destination.
I mean, it's not the same, but I mean, it's like I see at Pryche and what the Pryche Primary Museum, that brings in such a lot. There's such a lot of talk. I mean, I know Matt Clott's out there anyway, but the amount of people that want to go there and they're expanding it's phenomenal. They've got some amazing.
You just got to get that idea, haven't you?
Yeah, and it is, they have different themes, and the amount of business and revenue that comes in the town, it's phenomenal. I'm all for it, it's amazing.
Sounds really good. So on to item 8, which is a budget setting process, which I think you might have
No, it's
seen
not.
before.
Yeah.
I thought that's what I've written.
Well, it's just accommodation, but
All right.
you can skip it, because there's nothing to say.
No. Office accommodation, item 8.
Office accommodation, it's always on this agenda, it's nothing to report, the accommodation functions as it needs to. The reason it's on here is it's always under review, is considered at times a bit tight, it can get busy, but I wouldn't advise any urgency to go anywhere else. One, there's nowhere available and at this time, and two, I don't think the cost is warranted. That's all it is.
I noticed that you've got your window in.
Yeah, it's really nice to look at the water drum out of my window. No, but I would say, now because there's a window in there, that room has made space for another person, which is great, and therefore they're not as crowded in the other room, which is always a positive. Yeah, there is a plant in the window, yeah.
We're filling that already.
Don't worry, I'm killing it slowly. Not the colleague, the plant.
Right, so item 9, budget setting process, which is really just to note, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I would like you to resolve to approve it, just to make sure that you've considered it. This is one of my little protocols. This is how I think it's appropriate to do a budget setting process, in that it goes to every committee twice, and it goes to council a couple of times, and it goes out to the members, you know, to have it individually to make comment, and so there's umpteen opportunities for members to inform the budget for next year, rather than it be officers giving you suggestions a couple of times and then you get stuck in a corner because it's too late to change it. So this provides, it's a long run up, and we've already started the financial year, we said earlier. It's a long run up, but it hopefully provides everyone the opportunity to look at it a few times and inform it and feel like it's properly representative of the aims of the council. That's what that's all about, and it's the same as it was last year and this year. I'm asking you members to consider if you're happy to resolve to approve that, and that way we all know we're going in the same direction.
Councillor Hopburn?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds absolutely laudable. I mean, to have, well, 2 or 3 bites out, or 2 bites anyway, at the committee stage. That's certainly refreshing compared to another place, I would say. My main other question, of course, is an obvious one. What's the practice or the view towards asking people what they would think? This is before there's any, firm conclusion.
Now, I have no fixed view on this. I have done this in the past. I would suggest it's a very expensive process because if you're going to do it, you have to do it properly. And the last time I did it, it was dropped to every door in paper form to make it accessible and ensure everyone got a bite of the cherry. If you do it in spaces, there'll always be the argument of I never knew, I couldn't get there at that time. It's digital, I don't do digital. So I've got no issue with it being done that way. I think that's a very positive thing. I think you'd want more of a run up at it though. So I would advise at this time, just off the top of my head, that maybe on the last year of this administration, it does its budget by open consultation to all the public at that point, because the next election will have to absorb that budget. At least it's got more credibility with public engagement. That's but equally, if you want to go out to public, we can as a telephone.
I was particularly thinking about formal public consultation. I mean, there is, you can see that could be fraught with the questions, the matters that you've raised. Sometimes wonder actually for the, even a bigger authority, the response is basically going to say, well, we don't have to pay any more. In fact, we don't pay anything at all because we don't want to pay taxes, sort of thing. But presumably this is as it stands, these are member-led. If you use this expression, member-led anyway, member-led budget process. So, I mean, what's the attitude towards individual members or what's sounding people out? I mean, any of us, anyone, 20 could have a bright idea, and sort of sound people out without a big formal. I would want to be able to bring things to the table if you think it's worth it.
I would also say it is publicly consulted because it's published at every single meeting on our website. The document is published every time we issue it. But obviously, if members want to talk to the constituents, that's only a positive thing. I would suggest. Yeah. I don't see any issues with that. We don't do anything secret. Just the parish council. It's all open door. Anyone can see anything. So I don't see any risk to that. It's just if you've got to go wholesale public consultation, it's very resource hungry, and as you've expressed, you're absolutely right. It's quite a limited response, and it has some value. It's not to be said, but is the value merited by the cost? I wouldn't know if I could balance those two.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's up to you can say up to all members to make up their mind about how they want to approach it. Because you won't be able to sort of, you won't be satisfied that the budget is as complete as it can be. I mean, you can never be perfect.
Well, there's some pragmatism in there, and also you'll see some things you like, and you'll see things you like less. But it's representative democracy.
It's so easy for something worthwhile to be missed. Yeah, thanks.
So, Councillor Martin.
In the past, how has it been put to the public as a matter of interest? It's a good question that Councillor raised.
I can only speak for the last 2 years here.
Yeah.
So it's been done in this way in the last 2 years, which is shared to the members of the committees all the ways it has been listed there, whilst also being published on the website and all that.
Yeah.
It's, the occasions when I've done it in full public consultation being in another town.
It's a good question you've raised, but it's not an easy one to solve. It sounds easy, but it's not. Because it's true, like you've just pointed out, Peter, how do you, some people don't like digital, some people can't get it, because you could do, a campaign through the website or something, but not everybody sees it in that way in social media way either. But I do think it's important, like I say, for it's something could miss. I know, I think, that's what I think, probably, like you say, covering minds.
I don't know, I think the point.
Yeah.
So if you bring those ideas, I
Yeah,
mean, there's no individual member's going to dictate the budget. But if any individual member goes out and they come up with something or demand rises for something, bring it to that committee, there's two opportunities. I think that's great, actually.
I think something like, for instance, I think something like that, bring it. Yeah.
So we need to approve this process. Is anybody willing to propose this process approval? Councillor
Yeah, why not?
Hoffman? And Councillor Strange-Francis is seconding. All those in favour?
Thank you.
And I think we're on to item 10, unless I've missed another one out.
No, you're all right.
Which is,
Oh,
next
just that one,
meeting
yeah.
is the 12th of September, and it will be at 6 o'clock, as we've agreed that we will standardise meetings.
At 6 p.m, not 7.
Who's agreed?